Good evening, John. How you doing?
Good evening, Tyler. I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, doing just great. This night, this evening, this timeless moment that will live in infamy.
Everything has led to this.
Haven't we already gone over that rhetoric?
Yeah, we
Avoid
have.
rhetoric at all costs.
I don't know about that, but yeah, we've done that before. The
Oh,
little
okay. Can you hear me
every
all
moment.
right? I
I
just
can hear
made
you.
some
Yeah.
adjustments to my mic settings after our little mic check. Hello. So I just want to make sure that I'm coming through. We
Again,
had a
this is
we had
a
a
high quality operation we're running here. Yeah.
You got that right. We had a comment in YouTube that our audio was bad and
Really?
it hurt some ears. I don't know if it was the words being said that hurt the ears or the actual noise mic settings, but I know we had some bad mic stuff going on early in the early episodes that I've made a couple changes on my side to fix. I'm hoping we're okay. Please reach out again if our mic settings are hurting or if we need to fork out some cash for some more expensive microphones and studio time.
Yeah. And in that vein, donations would be helpful. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yes. If you think we suck, please give us more money.
More money would definitely help us not suck.
That would make us much. Maybe that's why I go back. I'm not sure if it's the words we say or the actual audio that hurts the ears. They could both be somewhat
Yeah,
painful to
probably both.
listeners. Well,
We just
cool.
got to get that sweet Oreo money. It's coming.
Oreo money. I also just take straight up Oreos. I don't even need money. Send me a box of
Um,
Oreos, and I will be set for however long they last. Few
yeah,
minutes probably.
yeah, that'd be fun to have some Oreos in as we could call it church history and Oreos, or Oreos with church history. I don't
I don't
know.
care what you call it. Just give me some cookies. But I think we
Sure,
got some better stuff to talk about than today. At least
sure, yeah. We'll save the Oreos for our Oreo podcast, which is still in the works. But yeah, we do. We have a lot to talk about today. Should be good stuff. Do you want me
I'll,
to
I'll
start
just
it?
I'll just let you take over because I haven't looked at anything yet, so I'm kind of jumping in fresh.
Again, this is a high quality operation that we're running over here.
I like I
Yes.
like I like being surprised when I sit down with you, John. It adds
Oh,
to my enjoyment level.
yeah. The surprise definitely shows. I'm kidding. I'm
Did I
kidding.
hit the record button? Surprise! All right, we're
uh,
good.
yeah, I see it. All right. So we spent the last few weeks
Oh, I
talking.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead.
I did think of something I wanted to say, and I could put this off. We're getting new listeners, somewhat regularly, I would say. If you fall in this camp and you're a new listener, I would highly advise you to go back and start from the beginning. Either the very beginning, but at the least the beginning of volume two. That's where we're kind of setting up the scene of what's going on. We may refer back to things in previous episodes and just assume everybody is following along. Where um, I I'm I'm pretty confident that some people are just jumping in right when they hear about us or maybe when they have time and might be missing earlier things. So if you fall in that camp, do whatever you want. It's your time, it's your podcast. But if it was me or I, I, if it was
There you
me,
go.
if it was me, then I would start either Volume 1, Episode 1, or even Volume 2, Episode 1, V2E1, no, C1, V2C1, just to kind of get it caught up to where we are. Because today we're talking about translation, and it's a lot of interesting stuff, I'm sure, although I don't know that for certain because I haven't read John's notes yet.
Yeah.
So how
Yeah, I
about you,
use
John?
secrets out. I use notes. All right. Yeah. So the last few weeks we've been talking about sort of the lead up to the translation of the gold plates. This is sort of the climax of all of that. Um, let's see. So last week or last episode, depending on if you're just joining us or if you're a longtime listener, we talked about the Martin Harris, his account of the Charles Anthon visit that he had. And I think we'll go more into detail later on in future episodes because, again, we're taking this kind of on a source by source basis, like this chronological order of the sources, not necessarily the narrative, although there's quite a bit of overlap. Um, but anyway, in the Charles Anthon visit that Martin Harris had, we had a few questions about that. Namely, we had one referring to how it fit into, or how Martin Harris's account of the visit fit into the Isaiah uh, um, scripture, which is Isaiah 29:11 through 12. Um, I should have had that ready, but let me pull it up here. Give me one moment. I know the tension is killing you, but in this scripture, it refers to a prophecy in which a learned man would not be able to read a sealed book. So again, this is Isaiah 29:11 through 12. I'm going to read from
Do you
the
want me to
King
read that?
James Version. Yeah, if you have it, that'd be great.
Yeah, after I realized you were stumbling, I pulled it up in 2 seconds. So
That's
I've
great.
got it.
Thanks for being
I've
on
got it.
top of it.
I've got it for you. Chapter
All
11.
right.
I don't know King James
Chapter
version. All right.
chapter
Google
29, verse
Google
11.
knows the good stuff. It gave me King James version. So and and the vision of all it and the vision of all is become unto you as the words of a book that is sealed, which men deliver to one that is learned, saying, Read this, I pray thee. And he saith, I cannot, for it is sealed. And the book is delivered to him that is not learned, saying, Read this, I pray thee. And he saith, I am not learned.
Good job. Uh, yeah.
Do you want me
So,
to keep going?
no, that's good.
Okay.
So, this scripture has traditionally fit into the Martin Harris version of the Charles Anthon visit. And the reason, of course, is pretty obvious. It talks about a sealed book, which learned men, the learned man in this case being Charles Anthon, could not read. Sealed book is, of course, the gold plates, because apparently the gold plates, a portion of them were sealed and not accessible to Joseph Smith. So the connection between Martin Harris's visit to Anthon and this scripture came after the fact, and we're not sure when exactly. It came before 1832 because Joseph wrote about this prophecy being fulfilled. Now, I wish I was more of an Isaiah expert so I could give more context around this. But it's very, very likely that somehow Joseph made the connection between Harris's experience and this verse, or somebody made the connection. Richard Bushman states that when this connection was made, this is what really excited Joseph. It wasn't so much the fact that Anthon was able to sort of verify the characters that Harris put in front of him. It was that there was this connection to the book of Isaiah. It really, really excited Joseph, and it helped to solidify in his mind his role as a prophet. So this, so the Anthon experience, along with the connecting it to this verse went a long way in Joseph sort of establishing his own identity.
Yeah, that's cool. So you mentioned last time then that, I mean, accounts differ based on what exactly happened in the room where it happened, but
Mm-hmm.
there you go. But
Easy. We don't have the
yeah,
rights to that.
oh, X, in the room where it occurred. Um, anyway, so the accounts differ based on what actually happened, but we
Right.
definitely established that whatever happened there, um, Martin Harris came back more committed to the cause, more, um, dare I say, convinced that the Book of Mormon is the Word of God and that Joseph Smith needed to translate it, such that he took out another mortgage on his house to get financed, dedicated basically his life to the cause.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then this is what's new to me. Now you're saying that it was after the fact when it appears that Joseph Smith became aware that they're fulfilling Isaiah's prophecy as this occurs as well.
Right. So one thing, there's a couple things here. The first thing to keep in mind is that whenever you hear of an Old Testament or even a New Testament prophecy being fulfilled in modern times, and this is from a historical perspective, it's being fulfilled from or within the prejudices that existed in the person who believes that prophecy is being fulfilled. Does that make sense? I'll clarify. So Isaiah,
Please.
so
I think I know what you're saying. I just don't know how to restate that in my words. So,
right. So Isaiah, or the person who wrote Isaiah, um, is writing in a specific time, in a specific language, to a specific group of people about specific things. Again, this is all from a historian's perspective. Being able to translate the meaning of what Isaiah is writing forward thousands of years to Joseph Smith's time is very problematic, right? Um, again, because they're totally different worlds, and so when someone in Joseph Smith's time looks back to these writings that occurred thousands of years ago, and says, "Ooh, this prophecy is being fulfilled." That prophecy is being fulfilled within their own mind, right? Not necessarily the original author's mind.
gotcha. So
Does that
you
make
so
sense?
you're saying, yeah. So you're saying that fulfilling any prophecy in historic terms is is in the eye of the person fulfilling it. That yes, Isaiah or whoever wrote that, um, Isaiah said that. Um, sorry, Isaiah said that um, that I'm already don't have it. That a learned man can't read the sealed book, and the unlearned man is the one to do it. He
Hmm.
may not be in his mind looking at Joseph Smith and Charles Anthon. In his mind, it could be just the words that he's writing. It could be, I mean, potentially from a historic perspective, him envisioning something completely different. But
Hmm.
um, but in the eyes of Joseph Smith, it's obviously him, and so you can't place that story back to Isaiah. Rather, you keep it there with Joseph Smith.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Okay.
exactly. So like a few examples. A book in Isaiah's time would mean something completely different to what it meant to what Joseph Smith perceived the book to be, or learned. Uh, what is a learned person in Isaiah's time, as opposed to a person who's learned in Joseph Smith's time, right? So there's all kinds of differences. So when somebody is looking at something like Isaiah, thousands of years after it's written, they're projecting what they believe the text to mean onto the author's intent. So,
Cool.
uh, so, so again, this is from a historian's perspective. Um, Joseph, this is Joseph saying, okay, and it kind of goes back to our Jesus Christ discussion weeks and weeks ago about how the authors of the New Testament were trying to fulfill prophecies that were made in the Old Testament. You know what I mean? They were trying to check all these boxes. And whoever made this connection between Martin Harris's visit to Anthon and this Isaiah verse found a box and they checked it. So a little bit more information about that. Oliver Cowdery said in a letter in 1835 that the angel told Joseph that, quote, the scriptures must be fulfilled before it is translated, which says that the words of a book which were sealed were presented to the learned, for thus has God determined to leave men without excuse. So this is Oliver saying that this verse in Isaiah had to be fulfilled uh, in a way to give the educated of the world a chance to translate the book or a chance to, have a look at it before it could be brought forth miraculously through the translation process that Joseph used. And then in 1855, Orson Pratt said that Joseph had no knowledge of the Isaiah verse before Harris went on his trip. And Martin Harris actually confirmed that himself later on. So this connection between Isaiah and Harris's experience was enough to get Joseph excited. So this goes back to Martin Harris's experience and his decision to help with the translation and the publication. This is him seeing a prophecy and projecting his own biases and perspectives and prejudices onto this verse and saying, I just fulfilled a prophecy. I'm even more convinced now. And I tried to find out how that connection was made between Harris's visit and the Isaiah verses, but I couldn't find much on it. Whether it was pointed out to Joseph or Joseph stumbled upon it himself, I can't say. So the next question we had was, well, this goes on along with the first question, which was there was last week or last episode, I said that the Anthon visit convinced Harris to go forward with helping with the translation and the publication. Obviously, there was a lot more to it than just this one visit. In fact, an interesting tidbit is that his wife, Lucy Harris, was more convinced about Joseph's mission than Martin was at the beginning. When they first found out about it, Lucy was the one who was much more willing to fund Joseph's work in getting the plates and translating than Martin was. Martin kind of came along slowly, but when he did decide to go along with it, he was totally in, whereas Lucy became less and less convinced that Joseph was, she took Joseph less at his word.
You might get into this, but wasn't there somebody who claimed that Angel Moroni visited her, and did he show her the plates? Did he just tell her? Was it just a vision where he talked to her? Who was that?
Yeah, that was the Whitmer's mother.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not related to this. We can keep going then. I just want to make sure that wasn't related to this story.
Right. Yeah. No, she was that story, just a little bit about it, and I should really look up her name. I'm sorry that I don't have it, but the Whitmers had given so much to help Joseph and Oliver. They'd housed them and all kinds of stuff. And the story was that David's mother had given so much that Moroni appeared to her one day and just showed her the plates as sort of a thank you for all that she had done. So I think it was Mary Whitmer, I think was her name. But anyway, yeah, we could talk about that when we get into the three witnesses a little bit more. So it's not just that Martin was all in all at once. In fact, he went through his devotion to Joseph kind of went up and down. It ebbed and flowed. And I don't want to get lost in the weeds here, but just by saying the Anthon visit convinced him to be all in. That's not the case. It's just me saying that's what got him down that path. But
I should have read the notes before I said that.
no, you're all good. So Harris starts by helping Joseph translate, and then they lose the 116 pages, which we'll also get to. But after Harris saw the plates, or claimed to have seen the plates in 1829, he recommitted himself to help Joseph get the plates uh, published and printed. So he actually started the negotiations with the printer in Palmyra named E.B. Grandin. And Grandin's price was really high, and for a number of reasons. Number one, Joseph wanted 5,000 copies of the Book of Mormon, which is a ton of copies at that time. And also because the residents of Palmyra weren't necessarily supporting Joseph. In fact, Grandin got a lot of flack for even considering publishing this book. And at one point, they made the agreement that Grandin was going to publish, and he started publishing, and then all the bad publicity around it kind of got to him, and he backed off a little bit, and he said, "Look, I'll do this, but only if I can have money up front." So he wanted the $3,000, and so it was up to Harris to kind of do that. And that was a lot of money for Harris to just fork over. And at that point, he did start to get a little doubtful, which for me, it's hard to blame him for that. He was going to have to mortgage a good portion of his farm, at least half of it, to come up with
So
that $3,000.
And you said this is 1829. So is this after all the translations completed, and now they're just trying to? They have all the manuscripts. Is that the right term? They have all the. They have it in English. They just need to get it printed at this point, edited and printed at this point. Is that
Correct.
where we're? Okay, and so
Yeah.
now and that's when he's, and that's when they need to find the money to do this. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So I believe they completed the translation process in June of 1829, and so they started shopping around for a publisher or a printer in that summer, the summer of 1829. And we know that during that summer, Harris began negotiations with Grandin. And when he found out that he had to pay $3,000, he started to get a little hesitant, and it's kind of unclear whether he asked for a commandment or whether it just came. But as a result of this, we have Doctrine and Covenants, section 19. Just a few highlights from that section. One verse says, and that section is meant for Martin Harris. It was directly for him. And it says things like, "Thou shalt not covet thine own property, pay the debt thou hast contracted with the printer." And so at some point in August of 1829, Harris completes the mortgage on his farm and comes up with the money, and Grandin continues with the publication. Now there's some discrepancies here. Oh, go ahead.
If there's discrepancies, maybe we talk about those and then get to my question.
Sure.
You might get into this later as well. So go ahead with the discrepancies, and if I'm still questioning, I'll ask.
Yeah. So the Revelation, Doctrine and Covenants, section 19 was given in the summer of 1829. We know that. We know that Martin Harris completed the mortgage or did the mortgage for his farm in August. I think it was August 25th of 1829. And then the publication went on. But according to Joseph Knight Sr., we've looked at his recollection before, in March of 1830.
Maybe I'll put it, for those who don't heed my suggestion of going back, maybe I'll put a little bit of reminder. Joseph Knight Sr., longtime friend of Joseph Smith, as far as we know, always faithful and active and contributing to the church and until he dies. So a very helpful friend of Joseph Smith.
Correct. Yeah. Thanks for that clarification. So, according to him, in March of 1830, he's with Joseph, and they actually cross paths with Martin. And Martin, he says, has Book of Mormons with him, or Books of Mormon, if you're one of those people.
Copies of
Uh,
the Book of Mormon.
yeah, he's got copies, and Martin is nervous because the book isn't selling as well as he would hoped. Now that's important because in January, uh, if we back up a little bit, again Martin became once again hesitant about how the book would do. Now, again, he mortgaged his farm to get this thing paid for, and the reason he did it was because he believed that the sales of the Book of Mormon would reimburse him and he'd be able to buy his whole farm back. So sometime in January, he gets, or December even, he gets kind of nervous, uh, and worries that the book isn't going to sell as well as he'd like. So he and Joseph Smith Sr. actually sign a document, and it's really interesting because the document was actually written by Oliver Cowdery, and they both signed this document that basically says Martin has the right to sell the book, and he can sell it as much as he wants, up to $3,000, which was the cost of his mortgaged farm. After that, the any remaining profits go to Joseph Senior and his friends, which is kind of interesting. Um, so anyway, so that happens in January, and then again, according to Joseph Knight Senior, in March, 2 months later, Martin is very nervous because the book's not selling like he thought it would, and he asks Joseph for another commandment. And Joseph says, fulfill what you have, you know, in other words, referring him to an earlier revelation. But Martin doesn't really let it go. In fact, Joseph Knight Sr. recounts that that night they were spending the night together. Martin wakes up in the middle of the night just in complete distress, sick to his stomach, very nervous, and he says, I just need another commandment. He's essentially asking for another confirmation that this is the right thing, that he's doing the right thing. Now, according to Joseph Knight Sr., that's when Doctrine and Covenants 19 comes along. um, so so there is a little bit of discrepancy here. I'm kind of in the camp that DNC 19 came in the summer of 1829, but Joseph Knight Sr. says it came in March of 1830. So there's there's some discrepancy there, but the point of it all is that at some point Martin Harris uh, was hesitant to pay for the publication of the Book of Mormon, but he received a revelation. And if you read through DNC 19, it's pretty strongly worded. Basically calls Martin to repentance, tells him not to covet his own property, says, get on with supporting Joseph, and let's get this done. So at that point, he received the revelation, whether it must have been in the summer, I would think, because he did fork over the $3,000 in August, and after that he was ready to go, but he still had some doubts in the months that followed, which is kind of interesting. I think it humanizes these historical characters that we read about. So often we think, oh, look how faithful, or look how strong, look how dedicated they were. But these were regular human beings, and although they did live 200 years before us, there is something relatable about that. It's like, not only is he facing the very real possibility of losing his farm, which he eventually did. He had to sell it about a year later, but also his wife is breathing down his neck and telling him he's being bamboozled. And it's not just his wife either; it's his friends, community members of Palmyra. And Martin Harris was a man of pretty high standing, and so to have basically the whole community turn against you, including your own wife, plus the prospect of losing your farm, that's pretty tough for someone to swallow. So
Definitely.
uh yeah, so that's Martin Harris for you. That we had a few listeners who were kind of wondering about that, so I thought I'd dive into that a little bit more.
No, I appreciate that. That was great clarification, and it gave me enough time to skim through the notes and answer the question I had.
Oh, good.
So yeah, we'll get that. No, I was wondering because I thought we started off saying we're going to talk about translation, and then we jumped to the in my mind, because I wasn't following exactly, we jumped to the publication of the Book of Mormon. But I've now followed that this is a follow up from last one, the Anthon event, saying
Hmm.
Martin Harris came away from this convinced that the Book of Mormon um, needed to be translated. But you're just explaining that it's more of a process than just this one visit. That there was a series of events that occurred that got him there,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
then all right.
Yeah. So there was another question that came up, more of a comment than anything. Said, so you very generously, Tyler, posted the so-called Anthon transcript to our Instagram page. It's still there if anyone's interested. And we had a comment that said this is not the Anthon uh, transcript, which is correct. And as I said in that episode, this is traditionally held to be the Anthon transcript, or at least traditionally held to be examples of the characters that were found on the gold plates. Um, so I thought I'd get into just a little bit about where this transcript comes from. And again, this is that little slip of paper that's on the Instagram page. It's got uh, rows that are parallel to each other, up and down, and yeah. Anyway, you can check it out on our Instagram page. But currently, it's owned by the Community of Christ.
Hey John,
And yeah,
when you say traditionally considered to be the Anthon transcript, has it been pretty much debunked that it's most assuredly not, or is there still discussion around it, or what do you mean by traditionally? Without what would you say it's considered today?
yeah. So traditionally, when I say traditionally, I mean within LDS culture, you'll find a lot. You'll find this transcript um, within a lot of households and libraries and things like that. Like, like it's not uncommon to walk into a faithful Latter Day Saints home and see this Anthon transcript framed on their wall, with like a scripture or something next to it. I don't know if you've ever seen that, Tyler, but I've seen it a couple
I,
times.
I've never seen it, or at least I
Okay.
didn't know that. Maybe I just went way over my head, but I don't recall ever seeing that.
I,
The homes I
I,
go in aren't quite as nice as your friends' homes, so
it's
I,
true. It's
I
true.
couldn't
You
imagine.
live. You're kind of with the dregs of society. That's true. Um, but no, I'm just kidding. So anyway, this is something. These characters are traditionally thought to be, you know, copies, at least copies of the Anthon transcript. But I would argue it's not uncommon for people to think this is an exact copy of the piece of paper that Harris took to Anthon. Um, but anyway, this piece of paper is, among historians, the majority of them would say this is not the exact Anthon transcript. But it probably has characters that were copied off of it, or at least resembled what was on there. So this exact uh, transcript, I guess, I don't know what else to call it, is owned by the Community of Christ. It was in possession of David Whitmer when he died in 1888. David Whitmer, of course, is one of the three witnesses.
Sorry, you say Community of Christ as though everybody knows exactly what it is.
Don't they?
So well, let me make sure I know what it is, and if I'm wrong, then you can clarify for everybody.
Sure.
So
You're wrong, Tyler. No, I'm just
the
kidding. Go
Community
ahead.
of
Sorry.
Christ is a somewhat new name for the organization. There's Joseph Smith. When Joseph Smith died, there were lots of different schisms, as a word I learned recently. Lots of different religions that kind
Oh,
of spread from Joseph Smith. The two largest ones were the Brigham Young, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Um, and then the I maybe call it the next largest one was Joseph Smith's son, Joseph Smith III, leading it, with Emma Smith involved in that church as well. And so that was, what was the first name of that? The Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or did it have a name prior to that?
I'm pretty sure that was the first name, but
Okay.
I'm not
It,
completely
in,
sure.
all right. In my lifetime, it was the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And
Hmm.
as I said, they, I don't know, 15, 20 something years ago, they renamed it to the Community of Christ. And,
Hmm.
and so that's who they are. It's one of the major schisms from Joseph Smith's Mormon church, to use that term in historic
Right.
context.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good clarification. There are a number of different churches within sort of the Mormon umbrella, I would call it. But yeah, so the Community of Christ is the reorganized church, or formerly known as the reorganized church. But this piece of paper was owned by David Whitmer, and he probably got it from his brother John, who created it. He's credited, John Whitmer's credited as the creator of this transcript. And he may have received copies of it, or at least an idea of how to create it from Oliver Cowdery, who also gave the Whitmers the printer's manuscript of the Book of Mormon and other early church documents shortly before he died. So it's credited to John Whitmer, but it's possible that Oliver Cowdery created it, or at least Oliver had it. Um, yeah, so John Whitmer had it, and after David Whitmer died, it was passed to his son, and eventually to David Whitmer's grandson. And about the end of 1899, the transcript came into possession of a guy named William Benjamin, who was a collector and dealer of rare autographs and books in New York. And in 1902, the first presidency of the reorganized church, now the Community of Christ, bought the document, and along with the Book of Mormon printer's manuscript and other pages, other important documents. So that's where this comes from. Again, largely assumed now among historians not to be what Anthon saw. And the reason for that is because, like we talked about last time, Anthon described the document as having lines that went up and down, parallel to each other, along with what looked like a copy of the Mexican zodiac. So, and he said that twice in two of his accounts of the visit. So we're fairly certain that it's not the right one. Um, but another interesting fact, we'll touch on these real quick, is that there's other copies of the characters from the gold plates. Oliver Cowdery wrote some down, and Frederick G. Williams also wrote a few down. And in December of 1844, there was a New York newspaper. I can't remember what it was called, but it was a Mormon one that was meant to sort of bolster Joseph's image. And on the cover of one of their issues, they had some characters from the gold plates as well. So, so those are kind of interesting too and fun to look at. Maybe we can
Are,
post those to our Instagram.
yeah. Are you qualified to say whether, I mean, this is Reformed Egyptian. Are you qualified enough to say how similar or not it is to Egyptian?
Nope.
Okay. Go talk to your local
No,
Egyptologist. They're a dime a
exactly.
dozen. Just
Yeah.
look one up on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm sure they're in the
I say that in
yellow
jest
pages or something.
because I say that in jest. There's from my understanding, very very different opinions among
Right.
expert Egyptologists. I think there's a by very different opinions. I think there's the believing experts' opinions, and then there's the secular experts' opinions. And as I understand, those are very different.
Yep. Not surprisingly, traditional Egyptologists would look at them and say, "No, it doesn't look like anything that I'm aware of." And then you're right. Someone who's probably a practicing Latter-day Saint who has who's something of an expert in hieroglyphics might say something different. So that
And
that would be an
I'll add,
interesting study to look into. I'm sure it's
I,
been done.
I'm, I might add just my opinion, which nobody cares about. Um, that you say somewhat of an expert. I think it's fair to call them experts. They know more about Egyptology than the non-experts. So even though they have biases, as all do, I don't want to discount their
R-
expertise.
right? Yeah. No, I didn't mean just that they're dabbling in it. I mean, that they're legit experts.
Okay,
So
I don't know what somewhat means. Maybe that's a vocabulary word I need to learn.
maybe it's in the same place where you learn schism. That word of the day calendar you've been looking at. Maybe that's
I'll, I'll look forward ahead. Maybe I just haven't hit that day yet.
yeah. No, I'm just kidding. Um. So all right. So let's get into the translation process. This is obviously one of the more mysterious, controversial, interesting, whatever word you want to use, uh, events in the history of the Latter Day Saint movement.
Hey,
Um,
John, I have a question for you, and we'll do this
sure.
live. This is live producing here. We're about 40 minutes in, and we're about to start a brand new topic. Now that we're not going
Yep.
live anymore, we can really do anything we want. Is this a good point to just say, "Wow, this has been a great follow up to last episode.
uh,
Let's start next one," or is it worth just continuing on through translation?
no, we can open it up or close it down, however you want to look at it.
Yeah,
If we close it down, then yeah, I can say a little bit more about the characters and the Anthon transcript and all that, and
yeah,
then
I'd
we
like
can
to hear
start fresh
that.
with the next episode.
I'd like to hear that, and I'd also don't want to rush us or not. I don't want to rush us
Mm.
on the translation either. So maybe we'll um, if you have more to say, then definitely let's listen to that, and then
Sure.
we'll. I'm making this your call because I want angry listeners to come after you and not me for the for making them wait another week to hear about this.
We don't have any angry listeners. Our
Not
listeners are
yet.
always just super happy go lucky and they're just grateful we're doing this, if we're
until
honest.
until they find out that we're making them wait an extra 7 days to listen about translation of the Book of Mormon. That's when their switch flips and they say, "I've had enough. I want my translation now."
uh, that's a good point.
Let's
Well,
do it. Let's make them wait. My call.
all right.
Send me angry emails. Tyler Jones at pick whatever domain you want, and I'm
He's
sure I'll
got them
get it.
all. Yep.
I'm sure I'll
They
get
all go
it.
to him. Yeah.
There's no other. There's no other Tyler Joneses to compete for him, so it's all. Yeah. All right. Let's yeah. I think that's a great idea. Let's, especially since you have more to say about this. Let's talk a little more about this, and then we'll have a more natural um,
Yeah.
ending slash moving into the next episode.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. So,
If we spend another 15 minutes deciding, then the decision can be made for us as well. We could
that's
just keep going.
true.
We
Should
could
we
just
keep
keep.
discussing that?
Sorry, go ahead. You were about to say something valuable. I
Not really.
apologize.
Well, last in our last episode, you mentioned you kind of were wondering how Emma could have helped Joseph copy down the characters, and because there was one record, I think it was Joseph Knight, that said that uh, Joseph and had Emma help him copy characters down that he gave to Harris to take to Anthon, right? So, and I just kind of was like, well, I don't know. She probably gave him a pencil or something. That's how she helped him. But anyway, uh, it does come from Joseph Knight's recollection, mentioned that Emma helped him. And I did find an article that talked a little bit about it. It's basically said that the process for copying the characters down was unclear. Um, the I mean, you look at it and you kind of assume that he made the characters himself because no one else could see the plates. And then after he created his copies, he probably worked with 2 or 3 other scribes to make additional paper copies. And that's when Emma stepped in to help. She probably copied his original copy of the characters, and
Okay.
uh, and there could have been others that helped him. Supposedly, Emma Smith's brother helped with this, helped copy down some characters, and so he was involved in the translation process a little bit, uh, which is interesting, especially since Isaac Hale, Emma's father, was very, very much against it. Didn't really care for Joseph getting into this, especially after he said his treasure-seeking days were over. So it's kind of
Is this
interesting that Emma's brother was involved.
Were they living at his house at this time? Is that how he got involved, or
Yes,
okay,
or at least on his property.
on the property?
Yeah, so Joseph purchased a house from Isaac Hale soon after they were married. And I think I talked about in one of the previous episodes, Joseph and Emma returned to Harmony to kind of pick up some of her stuff and, maybe even make peace with her family a little bit. And that's when Joseph promised Isaac that his treasure-seeking days were over, and Isaac decided to kind of give him some leeway and help him get started in life, in a life of business. So he sold him a home that was on his property, and that's where Joseph and Emma lived, and that's where Joseph began the translation, or at least I don't want to say began, but that's where most of it was done.
Cool. When you say most of it, is that the hundred? Was that the whole book?
No, it's that's where
The 116 pages? What's most of it?
well, probably not even most of it. That's where they did some of it. That's where Martin Harris helped him there. Emma helped him there, and Oliver Cowdery may have started helping him there, but eventually they moved to the Whitmers. Um, so yeah, most of it might not even be the right word. A lot of it, we'll say.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So yeah, so the characters are very interesting, and again, I think the story of the characters and the Anthon transcript, the Anthon visit, there's more of a story of Martin Harris's struggle with his own faith. Um, and it's very humanizing, right? Traditionally, when we hear about Martin Harris in church history, it's that there was this guy who was super anxious to help Joseph, gave him some money, helped with the translation, lost the translation, screwed everything up for a while, and then he kind of disappears until the 3 witnesses. He comes and he's one of the 3 witnesses. Then he disappears again and comes back at the Kirtland era when he's excommunicated, which we'll get into down the road. And then he eventually comes back, and that's all we hear about Martin Harris. What we don't hear is how this was a really sincere person who wanted to do the right thing and faced a lot of obstacles to do what he considered to be the right thing, despite all, the community and his wife and the money, all these things that were pushing against him. So
You
anyway,
you mentioned his wife was so, and his all those that
mm-hmm.
life events. Did his wife stick with him? I mean, divorce was much, much, much less common there at that time period. But was his wife with him for all those steps when he came to Kirkland and came back after that as well?
No, I want to say she divorced him, or they divorced each other um, before the move to Kirtland.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, the
Because
marriage didn't last. So.
divorce is extremely, like extremely. Well, I don't know. You tell me. Was divorce a thing back then, or was it? Oh, I don't know. I just googled it, and I'm not even sure if
Yeah,
they did
yeah,
get
it was a
divorced.
yeah, it was a thing. It was obviously much different than it is now. It wasn't just like the two of them sat down and said, I want a divorce, and they went from there.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I mean, if Lucy Harris were to say I want a divorce, then she would have been essentially cut off, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
So my Google
so,
search says they got separated but not divorced.
mm,
I don't know if there's a difference.
no, yeah, I know that they got divorced because he later got married, but it's probable that they got separated or they were separated for a long time before the divorce because I don't think she went to Kirtland.
It says
What
she
else does
died in.
what
So
else
this
does
is this
Google
comes
say?
from BYU Religious Education Study Center.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and it said they got married in 1808. They
Mm-hmm.
raised a family of 4 kids. They got separated. They had discord from
Mm-hmm.
1827 to 1830, which is this time frame we're looking at.
Yep.
Lucy Harris became increasingly distressed, and then eventually Lucy wrote a letter to a local author who can. Let's see. Okay, here we go. By this time, Martin and Lucy had been separated for several years. So this is in 1833. They'd been separated for several years,
Okay.
and and Martin was living in Kirtland,
Mm-hmm.
and she was separated. And then it said that she died. Um,
Is it
I
18?
I lost where she died. Like 1836 is what I. Oh, there we go. She died in
Yep.
1836, and so possibly after that is maybe when he got remarried, or
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah. That's
maybe
exactly when he got remarried. So that's
okay.
probably what happened.
Maybe he waited for not waited for her to die, but maybe um, I don't know. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah. So again, that speaks to what you were
calling
saying,
you out,
right?
John.
Yeah. No, but it does speak to what you were saying with divorce. It wasn't just, you know, just go visit a courthouse and call it good. But yeah, so that does make more sense. I want to say where I read because I just read about their marriage not too long ago, and I think it said that the marriage did not last, if I remember right. And I just assumed that meant they got divorced.
Yeah,
So
sometimes it's I mean technicalities to a certain extent, really.
yeah, yeah, tomato, tomato, divorce,
If he's
separation.
yeah if he's in a different state and not in contact with her, and I don't know.
Yeah, but I know he did get married in Kirtland, and I want to say it was to somebody who was related to Brigham Young. Maybe like, let's
Caroline
see.
Young. It's the
Yeah.
same article. Do you want me? I could even just like read this whole article, and that could be our podcast this episode.
Sure. Go ahead.
Caroline Young was the second wife of Martin Harris. She was born in Hector, New York, and she was the younger sister to Brigham Young.
Okay.
So there you go.
Interesting. So
Hot off the,
Brigham Young's little sister married Martin Harris?
according to this well vetted article that I just pulled up on from Google.
Oh, okay.
Now
I
it's
thought
according to the BYU Religious Study Center. It has Brigham Young in the name, so I would trust it pretty well for Brigham Young's family
Yeah.
history.
I thought it was his niece or something, granddaughter or something. Well, anyway, yeah, it was I know it was someone who was much younger than Martin was.
Oh,
She was like 20
I'm
years
sorry.
younger or something like that.
I'm reading something else that says in 1847, Caroline's uncle Brigham Young. So
Aha!
it might be the niece.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet it was the niece. We'll look into it and get to the bottom of it
Oh
for
no,
some future episode.
yeah, no. I'm reading, correcting myself now. Um, she's the niece. She was born to Theodosia Kimball
Theodosia?
and John. What
Theodosia?
is that? How you say that? Theodosia.
I'm going to
So
say yes.
Theodosia Kimball and John Young, and John Young was the elder brother of Brigham Young.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so yeah, niece.
You know what?
My bad. My bad.
This could be the new format for the podcast.
We just
We learn we learn church history live on the podcast. Each episode like, "Hey, I wonder what Joseph Smith ate for breakfast most of the
I
time.
I
Let's
do
dig
have to say
into it.
I'm very grateful for people reaching out and commenting
Mhm.
if something's wrong or not the way they see it, or they have more questions. I think that's awesome. And here we are,
Yeah.
just taking an episode to clarify and make sure, because that's what this is all about. People are going to have different opinions. People are going to have different resources, and and hopefully if this podcast brings nothing else to the world, it's a way where people can kind of have the discussion in a safe environment where people aren't attacking or people aren't um, throwing out in personal insults as part of a discussion of what happened in history. So I
Yep.
think that I very much welcome and want to have discussions when people see things differently, and when I don't know if John's ever wrong, but in the event that we're wrong, I think it's great to for us to learn and for us to share that with the audience.
Yeah, I don't know what it's like to be wrong. Just
I
kidding.
Yeah,
No, I've been wrong already several times. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I love the interaction, love getting comments and questions. I love that people care enough to listen, but not only listen, but to send messages our way.
yeah,
So it's good
and
stuff.
that's kind of why I maybe we like the live idea, because then
Uh
it's
huh.
instant feedback, but the way we're doing it now is just as helpful.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
cool.
Absolutely.
Well, was there anything else on this?
No, we'll next episode. Let's get into translation. Finally,
Awesome. I
supposedly,
have
we'll see. We'll see if we get to it or not. I don't know if we
I
feel
have
like it. I guess.
I'm trying to keep it easy on listeners instead of giving them a list of cool things to do that are the same every week. I think I have one request this time. Uno.
Hmm.
Tell a friend if you like it. Tell a friend, hey, got a cool podcast. You might be interested. Um, and then when after you do that, give us 5-star ratings, donate, leave reviews, all that. But the one request this week, just tell your friends if you enjoy it, if you think they'll enjoy it. Again, this isn't about telling them what's right or wrong, but just say, hey, this is a cool podcast I found or I listened to. You might like it too.
Hmm. Heck yeah. So
So
yeah, let's. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we'd love to have you tell your friends, family members, associates, people you love, maybe someone you hate, even like, oh, they're gonna love this, and you know, as an act of
it might bring
punishment. I don't know.
it might bring you together. You'll have something in common to talk about. How wrong
Yeah,
John was on his podcast last week.
yeah, good water cooler talk
There you
for
go.
sure.
There you go.
Yep,
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks, John. We'll talk to you next week.
yep. Thanks, Tyler.
You like how I did that next week? It'll be funny
Yes.
when they get.
Let
It'll be funny next week when people are listening.
I know I'm gonna have to go change my shirt and take my hat off, comb my hair,
All
because it's
right.
gonna be next week.
We'll see you
Yeah.
later,
So
John. Life's rough. Roll on.